I've been doing this for 30 years. When I started back in, well, actually, I started animating in 1979. It was all hand-drawn animation. The first computer I ever saw was a Mac Classic in 1984, and it was the size of a bread box sitting on a table, and it was $8,000 and had 45K of RAM. Then the next computer that I saw that ran animation was at the National Research Council, and it was the size of one of these tables, and it was $250,000. And you can do more with your home PC now than you could do with that thing. So things have changed quite a bit in the time that I've been working in this industry. At Frantic Films, I'm the creative director, which means that depending on the project, I could be animating, I could be designing, I could be illustrating, or I could be doing all three. Or I could just be directing people on my staff, or I hire freelance people to come in and work on the jobs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a number of the projects that we have worked on. Some of them I've broken down so I can show you the steps that we go through so you understand what we do. At Frantic, we do, there's two divisions of Frantic Films. One is our live action division that does things like a TV series work like Todd and the Book of Pure Evil. We do a lot of work with the food channel like Pitchin' In, and we also did Princess and Till Death Do Us Part. The division that I work for is called Branded Content and Commercials, which means anything that needs to be animated or go online is what we do. So the first thing I'm going to show you is something that's called a demo reel. This is a reel that we put together that sort of shows the breadth of the work that we do, and it'll give you a real feel for the style and the quality of the commercials that we have worked on. At Frantic Films, we use a couple of different 3D animation software packages. We use 3D Studio Max, and we use Cinema 4D. I primarily use Cinema 4D. I only started really learning 3D animation in about December. Up until that point, I've always been able to hire people to do that for me. But after all this time, I figured it's time I should actually learn how to do some of this stuff. So I've been slowly teaching myself how to do it, incorporating it in some of our TV commercials. We also use Photoshop, After Effects, and Illustrator. After Effects is a compositing program, so a lot of the commercials that you saw there were put together with a combination of 2D and 3D animation in After Effects. It's a very robust program to composite TV commercials. The next thing I want to show you is, let me see what it is. Oh, Unilock. This is a TV commercial we shot last fall, and we were down in a suburb of Chicago. And it was for a client who wanted us to do a combination of live action and animation for a paving stone company. So what we had to do was we had to go to this house that they had did all the paving stone work with. And because it was a combination of live action and animation, we have to create what's known as tracking points so that we can mimic the motion of a live action camera with a 3D camera. So what we did with that, we had a backyard, and we had to basically throw a bunch of ping pong balls all over the backyard. And then we have a program called Buju, which will read all those points, and it can match the camera move exactly from a 3D camera and a real camera, so that you get this sort of a seamless integration of CG elements and live action elements. And another thing about this commercial, if you look closely, and hopefully you won't see it because we did such a good job, the day that we shot, it was like Hurricane Katrina rolled through. The wind was just blowing the trees all over the place. And when we got back to Winnipeg, we realized that a lot of the footage that we had shot was unusable. And so what we had to do, we had to sort of look through all the footage that we had shot and find an area where the wind was just sort of gently blowing the trees. And we took that little piece of film and composited it into all of our shots, so that there's a shot of the people sitting on a patio, and we had to actually take, and we had to do some rotoscoping. We had to cut them out of the foreground plate and then add all this background plate in so that we didn't have the trees blowing all over the place. So you can take a look at this and see if you can see it, and hopefully you can't.
Outdoor living spaces come to life when designed with Unilock products made with Enduracolor. For a free estimate and design consultation, join us online at unilock.com. Unilock, designed to connect.
So like I say, in the case of that, we had a lot of work to do that we didn't think we had to do. So when we knew we had to do all the computer animation of the blocks writing on and everything like that, but to get back and realize we had all this work to do to replace all this footage was a bit of a shock for us. But luckily we had people here who had gone through programs. So a lot of them went through Red River's animation program and were available to us to come in and help us to make sure it all sort of worked seamlessly together. Also, the shot where the sort of the wide shot of all the paving stones and everything writing on, we had to shoot a background plate for that. When you do HD live action, it's 1920 by 1080 pixels. That background plate that we shot was 40,000 pixels wide, because it had to be so high res, and it had to give us a lot of latitude to do a lot of camera moves on it and work all together. And there's other shots too that we had to do a lot of going back and painting elements out. After the client saw the first cut of the commercial, they said, well, we don't like that little fence that's in there. And it's like, well, it's in the shot. What do you want us to do about it? And they said, well, go and erase it. So we went in and erased it, all with all our digital tools. The next thing I want to show you is a spot that we did for Cambrian Credit Union. They have a character called Unfee, and they came to us and they said, we have this radio commercial, and we have this character, and we'd like to bring them together to create a TV commercial. So what I'll do is I'll sort of walk you through the whole process of what we did with their character. So that's Unfee. My wife calls it the eraser head because he looks like he's got an eraser for a head. And what they wanted us to do then was take this radio commercial.
Faster than rush hour traffic, more powerful than a large double-double, able to leap potholes in a single bound. It's the Unfee, not your typical Cambrian member, but with powers and abilities just like those of mortal men. The Unfee, who can't change the course of the mighty Red River, nor bend steel with his bare hands, but who single-handedly has the power to save you on monthly service fees. Only at Cambrian Credit Union. Join him in the fight. Join Cambrian Credit Union and bank for free with the Unfee.
So we had this radio commercial. It has all this really good imagery in it. So what I did was I sat down and I started sketching ideas for what we could do in the commercial and how the character would animate and the various monsters that were going to attack Unfee through the spot, and his attitude and his poses as he was fighting to save you money throughout the whole spot. And what we did then we took this and sold this to the client. They said, oh, this is all great. So what we had to do then, once we had all these characters designed, we had to then break down their radio commercial and do what's known as an animatic. An animatic is like an animated cartoon strip almost, where it shows the entire action and how it's all going to break down. So that's what this is, I think. Oh, it's stopped.
Faster than rush hour traffic, more powerful than a large double-double, able to leap potholes in a single bound, it's the Unfee. Not your typical Cambrian member, but with powers and abilities just like those of mortal men. The Unfee, who can't change the course of the mighty Red River, nor bend steel with his bare hands, but who single-handedly has the power to save you on monthly service fees. Only at Cambrian Credit Union. Join him in the fight. Join Cambrian Credit Union and bank for free with the Unfee.
So once we had that and the client signed off it, we decided that we wanted to make Unfee a three-dimensional character. So then what we had to do, we had to model Unfee in 3 dimensions. So this is what's known as a 360 turnaround, just so we could make sure that he looks okay. In the spot, he actually has a head. But his head was going to be 2-dimensional compared to a 3-dimensional body. So once we had that, what we had to do is then take that model and start posing him to make sure that everything we wanted to do with that character was going to work. And because what happens sometimes when you build a 3D model and you start posing them, they break. And so their elbows start going all over the place, and their ties fly up and things like that. So you have to make sure that he will do everything you want him to do. And actually, we just got another spot from them. We're going to take him and tear him apart and rebuild him completely, because there's things that we wanted him to do in the spot that he wouldn't do. So we had to sort of do a lot of workarounds to get him to do the animation that we wanted. Also, there was a part of the spot that we wanted to animate the logo, so we had to do tests of how we wanted the animated logo to appear. And there was part that had water, so we started playing around with 3-dimensional software for water, but we didn't like it in the end, so we threw that away. And there was, and then we started working on the 2-dimensional aspects of the spot. This is the coffee cup monster that I designed, and then we had this is one of the backgrounds for the Cambrian Credit Union branch that I designed. That was all done in Illustrator and Photoshop. And then there's also, this is a kitchen that appears in the spot. And the last thing was, these are the 2 construction workers that appeared part of it. And the last thing was this fish, which doesn't appear in the spot because we threw it away because it didn't fit. So then we sort of bring it all together with all the animation and everything, and we end up with this.
Faster than rush hour traffic, more powerful than a large double-double, able to leap potholes in a single bound, it's the Unfee. Not your typical Cambrian member, but with powers and abilities just like those of mortal men. The Unfee, who can't change the course of the mighty Red River, nor bend steel with his bare hands, but who single-handedly has the power to save you on monthly service fees. Only at Cambrian Credit Union. Join him in the fight. Join Cambrian Credit Union and bank for free with the Unfee.
So you can sort of see the process, and this is like a really sort of simplified version of the process. Like the sketches that I did hundreds of sketches, and we did all the backgrounds that were created, and we worked about 2.5 months on it, I think, in the end. And there's like only 3 of us working on it. So it gives you an idea of the process that goes through to get to a finished spot. And again, because of the different aspects of the business and different demands of clients, what we have to produce for each spot is slightly different. For example, we've been doing Dufresne TV commercials for 6 years. I've done 180 Dufresne commercials. And if that doesn't kill your creativity, nothing will. But what I've learned in the time that I've been working on these commercials is that every commercial I try to do something different. I try to introduce something, I try to learn something, so that each commercial is keeping me interested. Otherwise, I could just churn these things out, because the way that the amount of money that Dufresne pays us, we have to turn out their TV commercials from beginning to end in 4 days. So it starts with me writing the script. I have to do an animatic, which now I do in 3D because with the 3D skills that I've developed over the last couple of months. Then it goes to the client who makes changes, and we go back and forth for a day making changes. Then it goes to my animators, who then produce the final spot in 2 days. So we have 4 days to produce a full 30-second TV commercial, which is pretty fast. The next thing I want to show you is something called Green Screen. And Green Screen was a really interesting project. We were asked by Discovery Channel out of Los Angeles to do this for them. It was for a show called Monster Garage that Jesse James hosted. And it was for a special. And Jesse James was building a nitrogen-powered car. And they wanted to do a bunch of segments about sort of environmentalism. So they came to us with this really terrible script and a terrible character. And I said to them, I can't do this. This is horrible. I have to rewrite this whole thing. So I rewrote the entire script was about a 15-minute script. Redesigned the character. Ended up doing probably about 100 different character designs before they found one that they liked. And what happens too with clients is I'll spend hours and hours and hours doing all these drawings, and you send them to the client, and what the client does is, I like his hat, I like his boots, I like his nose, I like his ears, I like his eyes, I like his mustache. And so you take all these separate pieces from all these characters and you try to bring them together into a character that still works. It doesn't look like a dog's breakfast. So the unfortunate thing about green screen was that we spent months and months working on this, and because we finally delivered it to Discovery, and because Jesse James could never get his nitrogen-powered car to work, they scrapped the entire show. So we had 50 minutes of computer animation done, which never aired, which happens quite a bit in our business, which is really sad. The best thing about it is we get this cool piece for our demo reel. And what this spot, or this piece of animation, is a combination of 2D and 3D animation. And it's also, and we did something called toon shading on the character. So the main character who you'll see in the spot is all three-dimensional. Everything else in the spot or in the animation is two-dimensional, whether it's the backgrounds or the other characters or we use a lot of stills. We incorporate a little bit of live action that was provided to us. But Dynamite Dan, the main character, is all toon shaded, which means we built him in 3 dimensions, in three-dimensional space in a computer. We animated them all. Then we ran him through a toon shading program, which basically makes him look flat and 2D. He still moves in 3 dimensions, but he sort of blends in nicely with a 2-dimensional background. So that's what this is right now. This is a section, the opening section of Green Screen.
Quit your shoving, you cowardly rat. What? I ain't going on no television show, no matter what Jesse West Coast Chompers James has to say about it. All right. Hold them cue cards up, son. Hello, my name is Dynamite Dan. And I forget this bushwall. I don't need no prompting. Listen up, you slack-jawed tube gawkers. Jesse James asked me to come out here and slap some information about the environment into your soggy noggins. Now, I know that when you think environmentalist, Jesse James sure shooting ain't the first person that pops to mind. What with the way he drives his vehicles and all. But believe it or not, little Jesse has changed his tune. Right now, back there, he's building a car that even Mother Nature could love. But before we see what the boys under the hood are whipping up, I'm gonna bend your ear a mite about the history of the environmental movement. Hey, shut your yaps! You're gonna enjoy it. Oh, yes, you are. Historians reckon the American Indian were the first true. Oh, now, hold your water for just a gosh darn minute. Looky there. It's a rare endangered bald eagle. Oh, and she's a beauty. You gotta love them great out of doors. Anywho, as I was saying, American Indians understood and respected the environment. They believed in preserving it for future generations. Time passed, and in the 1800s came this long-bearded son of a gun named John Muir. He was our most influential conservationist. They even call this feller the father of our national parks. You know, parks like Yosemite, Sequoia, Mount Rainier, and that great big hole, the Grand Canyon. In 1882, he founded the Sierra Club to protect this beautiful land of ours. Tisk. Some fellers just don't respect nature. And that's what our ancestors have been trying to beat into us. Pollute, and it's gonna come back and bite us on the behind. Sorta obvious, ain't it?
We went through the whole, exactly as we did with the Cambrian Credit Union spot, we had to go through the same process with this spot, or this animation, in that they gave us a script, we broke down the script, I storyboarded the whole thing, got their approval, then we did the animatic for it, then we had to start into the animation. And we had I think we had 5 different animators work on this, and one of them was in Australia. And so there was a lot of, juggling of timelines and time zones and everything like that to make sure that we got it all done on time. It was a really good project. The character was interesting to animate. He was a sort of a Yosemite Sam kind of a character, so it was a lot of fun. We don't get to do a lot of character animation, so to work on the Unfee spot and to work on this was a lot of fun for the animators. Otherwise, they're just sort of pushing type all over the place for defraying commercials, which isn't very interesting. The next thing I want to show you, this is a spot that we did for the Manitoba government, and they came to us and they wanted an animated spot for something called Safe Neighborhoods, and we looked at the script, and I decided that I wanted to go for a very specific look. We wanted to try something different again. We wanted to experiment on our end. We did a test that showed them sort of the feel we were going for, and they thought it was a really interesting way of doing it. We chose to go, originally they wanted it all sort of illustrated and flat, and we said, well, that's fine, but it's not going to be a very interesting spot. So we went out and hired an illustrator we know to do a whole bunch of black and white pencil illustrations. And then we took all those illustrations and scanned them into the computer, and then we mapped all of those drawings onto 3-dimensional shapes. And then we lit it and we animated it so it felt like you were looking at models, like tabletop models. And we also, the reason we went with a very black and white look, we decided that if you watch commercials all the time, they're all very colorful and lots of stuff going on. And this would really break through because it's completely black and white. The type is the only thing in color through the spot. And it would really sort of jump out in the commercial breaks when you're watching TV. So this is Safe Neighborhoods, I think.
We all want safe neighborhoods, and by working together, we're making a difference. Drug houses are being shut down, auto theft has been reduced, and now resources to help keep you and your community safe can be found online. Visit manitoba.ca and find out how seniors and others can secure their homes. After-school programs can keep our youth out of trouble. Neighbors can clean up their communities, and much more. Go to manitoba.ca and click on Protecting Families, Fighting Crime.
This is another example of a spot that never aired. Work we're so proud of. And what happened was we were just sending it to our render farm to get it so we could output it for the TV commercials. And that day, the Manitoba government called an election, which means the Manitoba government cannot run any advertising after that point. So we had the spot done, we delivered it, it never aired. So it looks great on our demo reel. At some point, maybe it'll get resurrected, and we'll see it on air. It's a great looking spot, though. Lots of fun to work on, lots of work. But in the end, again, and the way we keep it interesting for ourselves is we're always experimenting and learning things. There's so much stuff on the internet of people who are doing really interesting things with computer graphics that we're always looking at things, we're always sharing. We have friends. I taught at Red River College for 3 years. I taught traditional animation, which is basically hand-drawn animation, to computer animation students. And now I have ex-students who work at ILM, Pixar, DreamWorks. They work in London, Germany, Los Angeles, Vancouver, Japan. And they're always sending us stuff to look at so we can sort of see what's the latest stuff in the cutting edge of computer animation. And as I say, because of that, I have finally started to learn how to do computer animation. There's a program that I use called Cinema 4D, which is a very robust 3D program, but it's a lot of interest. There's lots of interesting plugins and a lot of interesting work being done in it. And so, but the next thing I'll show you is just some examples of some of the work that I've been doing since about December. It's mostly stills. There's a little bit of animation in there. There you go. So that just shows you what you can do in like 4 months or something like that of learning how to do this stuff. Jack, don't do that. There's our logo, just so you know. And we actually went out and with just a mini DV camera, we shot the live action on Main Street there, and then brought it into the computer and camera tracked it so that the 3D animation feels like it's actually in the place and the lighting's all correct and everything. Anyway, if you're interested, how many people actually want to go into computer animation? Okay. How many actually want to do movies or TV shows as opposed to games? Yeah, exactly. Who wants to go into games? Yeah, okay. Well, actually, that's probably the smart way to go, because right now there are more resources putting towards games as opposed to films and TV shows. I think the gaming industry generated $16 billion in revenue last year, and the movies was $4 billion. So you can see where the disparity is for that. The reality is that if you go into the gaming industry, you are going to end up probably modeling, texturing, or creating environments. Very few people who work in the gaming industry are actually animators. It's the same with working for someplace like Pixar or DreamWorks. The vast majority of the people who work at those places are not doing animation. They're doing, like I said, they're doing textures, they're doing background design, they're doing character design, that type of thing. So if that's what you want to go into, it's a great career. Red River College has a really good computer animation program. There are other really good ones across Canada. There's Ryerson, Algonquin, Sheridan College in Ontario has a good program. Vancouver Film School has a good program. Ringling in Florida has a very good program, but they're also extremely expensive. I think Ringling is $16,000 US. Or no, it's more than that. It's $24,000. Plus, you have to live there. There are a lot of really good online schools. There's something called Animation Mentor, which is out of California, I believe, and they have all kinds of really good animators as teachers. Guys from Pixar, DreamWorks, Disney, all kinds of places like that. And but again, it's like 17 grand a year to spend time in your basement on your own computer. And even if you don't want to go that route, you can learn on your own. There's a guy named Carlos Baena who was using a program called Animation Master, which is a really, really crappy 3D animation program. And he did this amazing piece of animation, and it went viral on the net, and he got a job at Pixar because of that one piece of animation. And so, there's so many avenues that you can do right now to get your work out there. There's so many people who will look at it because of the internet. When I was starting, the only way I ever saw animation was at animation festivals. So you actually had to go to a movie theater and sit and watch film that was projected. Now, it just goes out on the internet, and everyone can see it. Everyone can give you feedback. You can talk to professionals at Pixar and places like that that will actually, take the time to give you feedback on your work. So it's a great time to be doing this stuff. And if that's something that's interesting to you, I would say if you draw a lot, because in order to get into some of these schools, your portfolio has to be really good. They all have specific entrance requirements, and someplace like Sheridan College, which is probably the best animation college in the world, they get about 1,200 portfolios every year for 100 spaces. So that's you're sort of running uphill to get into a program like that. And also, if you draw and you only draw in one style, draw something else. If you only draw anime, draw realistic. If you only draw realistic, draw anime. Just so you sort of get yourself out of your comfort zone, and you learn from other people's work. That's how I started. I started copying the stuff out of comic books and Mad Magazine. And eventually I started to actually be able to work with other people and learn from them. And by working with other people, I learned all kinds of things, and my style changed completely. When I was in grade 11, I went to work for the summer with an animation company, and after I finished with them, my style had changed completely in 2 months. It was from grade 11 to grade 12. It was completely different because I had learned so much from other people in that time. So, and also libraries, great resource. They've got all kinds of books on animation history, art history, other artists. I would use that as a resource, and just learn and draw and do a lot of interesting work on your own before you go to school.